I don't know how many of you actually agree that, what has happened in the last 4 to 5 months is much, much more than what has happened in the last even, let's say, 40 months per se in cashless, by a show of hand. A lot? Yeah, so there's been a tsunami. So Ritesh, I'm just putting you on a spot. And these are not the timelines that, we as consultants any longer talk about. We don't talk about more than 3 years. But what does life for cashless look like in 2025?
Penetration of mobile, the Aadhaar authentication, plus some of the new concepts which will be rolled out very soon around the India QR or the Aadhaar Pay, the Bharat Bill Payment services which recently got launched. So all of these are good indications that the intent and the infrastructure is there, right? It will all boil down to the execution part of it and the customer education, which all banks and some of our partners out here, friends and partners I would say, out here are putting in the efforts to do that, right? The other big factor is that the youngsters or the millennials who are coming into the mainstream would love to go in for a lot of these transactions which are in a self-service mode rather than assisted mode. So given these data points and some of the successes that we have seen with payments platform like IMPS and UPI taking up in a very good manner right now, the future looks bright. However, having said that, we have been a very, very cash intensive kind of an economy. So if the idea is that we would reach 100% by 2025, it won't be a reality. But if we reach somewhere closer to a 50 to 60% mark, I think it would be a big win.
Naveen, next to you, you've been one of the earliest players, with ITZ cards out here in India. What has that journey been like, and what hit you on 8th of November?
Journey has been interesting. It's 10 years. We are going to be starting our celebration of 10 years very soon this year, this coming fiscal year. Very interesting. But unfortunately, like Ritesh has been saying, when I started the journey for digital payments, the physical payment or a cash payment in the country was 97%. With so many things happening, we're still at 90%. The interesting data point to look at, however, is that pre-demonetization, if there was a CAGR of, let's say, 20% to 60% between debit card and a wallets, on an average, I'm leaving specific players out, depending on the base, the percentage could vary. This is the entire industry. I think that range has already moved to about 30% to 60%. Now that means that if we were, by 2020, were to be about 40% digital, we could probably aim to be about 60%. 100%, I think, less cash is what even our RBI says, and we believe in that less cash is what it will be. There are a few places you do need cash. Fundamentally, we still believe that physical cash getting digitized is the bigger problem. Digital to digital, there are already enough things happening, and that's where the real growth has to come in.
How are you seeing the adoption, by the SME? And these are two separate segments, so they will not have the same kind of adoption or challenges out here. So tell us how you're seeing the SMEs and your, let's say, customers in the rural area adopt to something like cashless or less cash, whichever, we prefer at the moment.
So I think I'll be, cautiously optimistic about the future. But the reason I'm saying that is there's no doubt that both on the policy front as well as the technology front, there have been massive strides. But the problem is that if you go out to the ground and see, we're not just talking rural, I'm talking urban. If you go and talk to small, shopkeepers or small merchants, consumers, etc., nobody is actually transacting, right? The offline transactions are overwhelmingly cash. So the last mile is broken or fractured, right? And the reason the last mile is broken or fractured is because there's a fragmentation across end users. So, you go to a merchant, right, sell them a digital payment acceptance solution. They'll say कि भैया मैं क्यों लूँ क्योंकि मेरे customers का कोई demand नहीं है, मैं क्या करूँगा इसका, right? So you don't, on the other hand, they'll say कि क्या मेरे को supplier को cash देना होता है हर हफ्ते या हर 10 दिन, इसका मैं क्या करूँगा, right? So till you address, and you engineer that problem across, not just the merchant, but the consumer and the supplier, that fragmentation will be there, right? And you won't really move very far. Second, there's fragmentation, I would say, even in the service provider landscape, both in terms of, multiple PSPs right? But also, value-added services are on top. So digital lending, for instance, right, which is a new. So you can lend based on, payments data is actually a pretty strong underwriting asset. So there's fragmentation there, and then I would say finally the third kind of fragmentation is at the level of policy and innovation, right? So policy and regulation is catching up with innovation, and that needs to get more kind of aligned.
Anil, you and I had yesterday, if you remember, we were talking about 25 billion transactions, and what are the positive, you had a very interesting comment where you said that most of the measures which have been taken till now have been not a very positive way of incentivizing. So, demonetization can be a one-time thing, but, how do you sustain something like that? And you were talking about negative and positive incentivization. So tell us a bit more about that.
Sure, Ajna. So I think really if you have to go to a cashless society, we really have to see how we'll get there and how do we shorten the time. Yeah, that's the most important thing, shortening the time. And as you said, we have to increase the positives and reduce the negatives. And on increasing the positives, I think one of the good things that has happened is with mobile wallets, payment systems and everything else in place, they're good enablers. Now we need good drivers, right? We need something which will drive consumption. So the fact is consumption actually drives payment systems. And for example, when I consume electricity, I need to pay the bill. Or when I go in a taxi, I need to pay the bill. So we really have to see how do we divert the consumption towards digital, and how do we use digital to really empower and encourage consumption through that mechanism. So we need to encourage diversity, and we need to support that diversity. And the way possibly we can do that is hyper personalization. For example, today we do KYC. We know our customers, right? So now the next thing we need to do is do something about it. So after KYC, we need DSAI, right?
Talk a little bit about the company, your bankbazzar.com and the kind of work that you, sort of do. What fascinates me is that companies like this, insurance, banks, they say that we somehow can't live without our agents, right? And they say they come on our site, they see our product, but they go to our agents and buy it. But when you are trying to make it a totally, digital kind of an ecosystem, what has it meant?
Now at BankBazaar, we're about 8 years old. We're market leaders. We have about 15 million visits of people who come to us every month because they want to access the right financial product. The trending that we see, right, is because paperless has now come in, the growth rate in terms of sites like BankBazaar, banks' own websites, the growth rate is increasing exponentially. So is the offline system bigger today? The answer is yes. I think the challenge that players like BankBazaar face is we cannot offer the customer a hybrid process saying, I'll do half online and then I'll come to your house and I'll collect your bank statements or your KYC. The customer is going to say, so what, right? Why do I need to apply on my phone and have you come to my house? What the banks and us are collaborating to do is to say that the Evidence Act has changed. You can electronically sign a contract with eSign. The RBI allows for eKYC via OTP with certain caps. You can open a deposit account without a physical piece of paper, without a physical meeting. I think the question challenging us is, can you make it totally paperless? So in the world of the future, and by future I mean 1 year from now, a consumer opens their mobile phone, they're sitting in their house with their spouse, and they decide that we want to save, we want to invest, we want to buy a car. They do it on that mobile phone, and in minutes, right, without a meeting, without a shred of paper, that product is delivered to them. When we do that, right, I think we've truly leapfrogged what has happened elsewhere in the world.
Sunil, coming to you next. I think when we started talking cashless, it was a lot about wallets, right? So, and that's what Oxygen started off with. Then I think there was NPCI, UPI, there was Beam, there's multiple wallets out there. And there's also, huge, let's say, thought process which is going on saying that over a period of time, wallets will become irrelevant. Something else will come in place. So all of this, how are you seeing this space actually morph in the future?
Digital wallet's future is difficult if it is digital to digital. Because digital to digital is an area where BHIM, UPI, IMPS and all banks will make sure that they will make that experience as good as a digital wallet is. But where the wallet have future is these 950 million customers who want to do transactions in digital but do not want to touch their bank account to even go to an ATM. But that is their starting point of their experience with digital transactions. So if you look at telecom infrastructure which has developed, you now have a telecom shop, and out of 2 million telecom shop, about 300,000 shops have handset, have recharge, and have connection, and have content. This is all inclusive 300,000. And balance 1.7 million have pure recharges. So I'm not saying that everybody should be inclusive. So you will have, even in these 30 million, between 5 to 10 million will require to be all-inclusive infrastructure, which will do cards, which will do QR code, which will do UPI, which will do all these wallets, and it will do the card payments and Aadhaar payments. The balance 20 to 30 million merchants may go like recharge outlets for selective. So you have Aadhaar, you have QR code, or you have BHIM and all that. So where there is no infrastructure required using mobile. So digital wallet, converting cash to digital and then experiencing digital payment is the biggest USP.
So for people in this room who might come as a service provider or might be looking for let's say either investing, buying, what are those value drivers that you're seeing as far as the ecosystem is concerned?
Right. So we can go about talking about various value drivers, but I think that what will really drive the valuation of your particular company, I've got esteemed panelists here, but I think what will help is the ease in which the technology is able to enable a particular transaction. So what I'm trying to say is that if there is a transaction which a Rajesh sitting here is able to do, and also a Rajeshwari Bai sitting at the other end of the spectrum, if she is able to do that transaction, the ease in which the transaction can be done, and also the technology, so basically, an interface which is not layered, which basically also has a lot of, multilingual capability. Once you have that, and, having mobile phones sent across to various, north and south or east or west of the country, if these are the two things, if we are able to achieve, I think, that is the most, that is like the significant value driver.
Tell us, what does the future of cashless payment look to you, and why would somebody like you move to something like that? You do a lot of valuation. I know you interact with a lot of companies like this, but give us a consumer view.
As the future is concerned, I'm sure that, the infrastructure, all my, colleagues on the dais, Ritesh and Naveen and all have, Adhil and all have said the same thing, that you need infrastructure. You need increase of smartphones. Today we have just about 250 million smartphones, I think, or 200 million smartphones. And this number has to go up. And, you talk of the number of cards that people have today, I think 950 million cards from memory I'm talking are there in the system today, credit cards and debit cards. But, the number of account holders are less. A person may have multiple cards. So, the number of cards, the point of sale, all those things have to increase. Customer is still, the literacy ratio on digital banking, and, this needs to improve. And I'm sure that, Reserve Bank of India is spending close to 25,000 crores a year on printing of notes. Now, अगर digital जाते हैं, तो कितना पैसा बचेगा अपना? यही पैसा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के ऊपर खर्चा करेंगे. तो आप लोगों को digital banking को और बढ़ाना चाहिए. You must go towards pushing the literacy ratio in terms of the mid-level and the lower level starter to see on how they use. Mom and pop shops, kirana stores, ये लोग अभी तक नहीं accept करते हैं. इन लोग को एक्सेप्ट करना चाहिए कि डिजिटल बैंकिंग क्या होती है, डिजिटल पेमेंट्स क्या होता है. तो ये सब होएगा, और ये सब होएगा तो लिटरेसी भी बढ़ेगी.
Thank you, panelists, for being such a great co-panelist with me. Thank you.